Good morning, everyone. My name is Timothy Lee, and I'm a mining analyst here at Red Cloud Securities. We welcome Matthew Lennox-King, CEO of Contact Gold Corp. He will speak to us about Contact's gold exploration projects in Nevada. Matt, you have 15 minutes, and then we'll have a 5-minute Q&A at the end of the session. And attendees, please feel free to ask questions using the Q&A link below. Take it away, Matt.
Great. Thanks very much, Tim. Thanks very much, everyone, for attending this morning, and thanks to Red Cloud for the great platform to present on. For those of you who are new to the story, Contact Gold is a Nevada-focused gold explorer. We trade in Canada on the Toronto Venture Exchange under the symbol C, in the US on the OTCQB under the symbol CGOLF. And while there are many great parts of Nevada in which to explore and base your exploration company, we really think that our location that I'll take you through, that we are in the best places on the best trends in Nevada. So what that looks like, we have two key oxide gold assets in Nevada. We have Green Springs and Pony Creek, Green Springs being on the southern end of the Cortez Trend, and Pony Creek, of course, being on the central to southern end of the Carlin Trend. We're led by a team that has a really strong and successful track record in global M&A, discovery, and creating value for our shareholders. And our focus is on high potential projects, being our own projects, and then also looking for additional opportunities outside the company. We're entirely focused at the moment on unlocking value at our two key projects. We have a maiden resource estimate that we released in early January at Pony Creek of over 430,000 ounces of near surface gold. And in 2021, we delivered 3 new gold discoveries at our Green Springs project. Now, as far as location of our projects, in the case of both Green Springs and Pony Creek, we really are in some, I think, very compelling locations on these major trends. Both or each of our projects is located to either a producing or an advanced stage development project. In the case of Pony Creek, we sit immediately south and are tied on to the boundary of Gold Standard Ventures' feasibility stage railroad project. And in the case of Green Springs, we sit 7 kilometers east of Calibre Mining's permitted Gold Rock project. One thing that's interesting about each of these projects, our neighboring projects, is they each have less than 10-year mine lives. So relatively short mine lives, very compelling projects. And we think that there could be an opportunity there in the future for either Pony Creek or Green Springs to supplement those projects over time. We'll start off with Pony Creek. So as I said, we are looking at gold on the Carlin Trend. In this case, we're about 25 kilometers south of Elko, Nevada, which is the major mining center for northeastern Nevada. We recently delivered that initial or maiden resource estimate of 433,000 pit constrained inferred ounces of gold. That's hosted or delivered within a large Carlin type gold system. There are numerous oxide gold targets, occurrences, and growth opportunities. We've had a really, really strong hit rate or success rate in our drilling since we started in 2017, with over 90% of our drill holes hitting gold. And that's on the heels, of course, of quite a bit of historic drilling that we inherited when we acquired the project. Looking at the map on the right-hand side, we have Pony Creek and its initial resources in the southern end of this trend. And then coming to the north, we end up at Gold Standard Ventures and their South Railroad project. And then finally, in the very northern part of this 40-kilometer belt, we have Nevada Gold Mines with the Rain Mine and the Emigrant Mine. Looking at the lay of the land at Pony Creek, here we're looking north across the Bull Zone, which hosts the bulk of the resources here at Pony Creek. We can also see the Stallion Zone, which hosts a considerable amount of the Pony Creek resource as well, the Appaloosa Zone, and then see all the way up to our Elliott Dome target, which marks the northern part of Pony Creek, and that's immediately adjacent and largely surrounded by Gold Standard Ventures. Coming into the nuts and bolts of the Pony Creek maiden resource estimate, we're looking at 433,000 pit constrained ounces at an average grade of 0.52, which is really right in the sweet spot for an open pit Nevada resource or mining operation down the road. The average grade of an open pit gold mine in Nevada is approximately 0.4 to 0.45 grams per ton gold. And you're typically looking at all-in sustaining costs to produce an ounce of gold in Nevada of between $1,000 and $1,100 US dollars per ounce. So looking at really high margins, and essentially Nevada gold production comes down to efficiency. And we think that Pony Creek down the road can certainly participate in that. So coming through the resource itself, we're looking at an overall strip of less than 3 to 1, certainly important when you're looking at a bulk mining surface scenario down the road. It's actually based on 118 drill holes completed by Contact and previous operators. And it's split between 3 main areas. We have the Bull Zone, the southernmost of the resource areas at about 340,000. We have Appaloosa delivering 30,000 ounces to the resource, and then Stallion delivering 63,000. And we really view this resource as a point in time, an opportunity to keep growing. Certainly in the areas of the Bull and Stallion, there's a lot of open space to continue incrementally adding to these resources. And then through testing new targets that have not been drilled, like the Mustang target, which is well in excess of 1 kilometer long, and the Elliott Dome target in the very north, we think we have the opportunity to deliver new discoveries that ultimately become additional resources here at Pony Creek. If we look at the regional context, now we've of course borrowed this chart and reproduced it from Gold Standard Ventures and their feasibility study. One thing that really jumps out to us is the production profile from that South Railroad project currently falls off quite dramatically between year 8 and year 9, going from 95,000 ounces down to 25,000. Now, Pony Creek, with that current resource of over 400,000 ounces, could nicely slot on there at the tail end of that mine plan, round it out, and assist in delivering a 10+ year mine life. Now, in the meantime, we see clear opportunities to expand the resource footprint at Pony Creek. That's through drilling and solid exploration. We're currently targeting drilling Q2 onwards, likely June onwards, and focused on Stallion and Bull. This is where we have the near surface or at surface outcropping oxide gold mineralization, and metallurgical test work so far indicates that that is going to be a relatively straightforward process and very similar to the run of mine process that GSV is looking at for their Dark Star deposit just to the north. From Pony Creek, we'll come down to Green Springs. Much like Pony Creek, Green Springs is a large outcropping or near surface gold system. This one saw some limited mining in the late 1980s. We acquired it in 2019. We really viewed this as an opportunity to come in, acquire old data, do some really solid science-based exploration, expand the gold system, and make new discoveries. And that's ultimately what we were able to deliver in 2021 with new discoveries at the Tango, X-ray, and what we now call the BC Gap targets. As I said in the introduction, we're located 7 kilometers east of Calibre Mining's Gold Rock Development Project and Pan Mine. Calibre is an aggressive new entrant into the district. They acquired Fiore Gold in a transaction that closed in early January and have over 85,000 meters of drilling planned between Gold Rock and Pan for 2022. And those are really to build on reserves, I beg your pardon, of 21 million tons at 0.42 and 19 million tons at 0.66. So really right in that same sweet spot grade-wise that I described back in the Pony Creek section. So our next steps here is really drilling at Green Springs. We've made discoveries, we know we can grow them, and we anticipate having a drill on the ground here a few weeks from today to start that follow-up and expansion process. Looking at Green Springs, it really is a target-rich environment. If we look at the long trend here, this represents what we call the mine trend. It's over 3 kilometers of near-surface gold mineralization with higher grade pods or blowouts along that, and remains open for approximately 1.5 kilometers or a mile to the south. The BC Gap discovery that I referred to on the previous slide sits in the northern third and actually is a stacked horizon beneath what was mined or saw limited mining in the 1980s. When we step outside the mine trend, this is where we get into some of the real blue sky and I think really compelling exploration opportunities. In this northeastern trend, we have the X-ray discovery and the Tango discovery, both from last year, both wide open, both will be drilled in the coming weeks. And then outboard of that, we have the Whiskey and Foxtrot targets, both very large, never been drilled before, and we think offer some really, really strong exploration potential. And we've also got the Gulf Zone sitting down here where we have some gold up to 1 gram per ton in drilling, in limited drilling back from the 2020 drill program. Again, like we did at Pony Creek, we'll try and put this in context in real space. So we have the mine trend here represented by the red arrow. We can see the historic D pit here, or the Delta pit in the center of the trend. We can see the callouts from what we call the Zulu target or Zulu zone at the southern end of the mine trend. We can see the high-grade Echo zone. And then most importantly, we can see that BC Gap discovery hole sitting up here in the northern third of the mine trend. We're going to now turn the corner up to this northeastern corridor, running from X-ray through what we call Alpha up to Tango. And we'll take a closer look at that on the next slide, which is here. So this corridor does total about 1.5 kilometers or nearly a mile of strike length, running from the northern end of the mine trend through the X-ray discovery, where we have up to 40 meters at over 1 gram, starting right at surface, coming through the Alpha zone, which is an established target at surface, largely oxidized, all the way up to Tango. Now, our goal here over time is to ultimately connect these into one continuous zone of mineralization at roughly 1.5 kilometers of strike length and advancing this towards resource definition and ultimately getting to a high quality, high grade oxide gold deposit here on the southern end of the Cortez Trend. So next steps at Green Springs, started drilling, looking like a mid-March start at this point in time. That's going to be entirely dedicated to following up on the high-grade Tango, X-ray, and BC Gap oxide gold discoveries that we delivered in 2021. The focus there is expanding the size, the scale, and the continuity and charting a really strong path towards resources and ultimately high-quality resources. And then while we do that, as we do on all our projects, we're still looking at ongoing target development, refining targets, refining those drill programs so that they are as efficient and as effective as possible. As I mentioned on the opening, the leadership team behind Contact certainly has that strong track record of discovery and global M&A success. If we start with our chairman, John Dorward, until recently, he was the CEO at Roxgold in Burkina Faso, which ultimately was acquired by Fortuna Silver Mines. George Solomus, one of our key directors, leader at Integra Resources, was executive chairman at Integra Gold when it was acquired by Eldorado back in 2016. And then on the exploration front, I'd certainly like to key you guys in on Vance Spalding, our VP Exploration, who I've worked with since 2008. Very strong background in exploration in Nevada, where he's credited with the discovery of the high-grade Ren deposit, which is plus 2 million ounces, and certainly a lot of global experience as well, which is always a benefit to bring back to Nevada. Myself, I have approximately 25 years in the business as both an exploration geologist, running programs from grassroots up to PEA and resource definition and onwards. And then I've been in executive and leadership roles since 2011 with Pilot Gold and certainly now Contact Gold. Looking at our cap structure, current trading range, and I believe our last trade this morning was 6 cents. at 301 million shares outstanding. That gives us a market cap in Canadian dollars, 18.1 million. Cash is approximately 2.8 million, so we're well funded for our exploration plans at both Green Springs and Pony Creek. And analysts who follow us, Brock Coulter-John at Cormark, Jordy Mark at Haywood, and certainly Tim Lee here at Red Cloud. When we look at our major shareholders, we'll start with Waterton, the large Toronto-based private equity group. They've been a shareholder in the company since day one. They're large, they're supportive, and very much aligned with management and the rest of our shareholder base. We do have a very strong institutional ownership, 27%. That includes some of North America and Western Europe's leading precious metal funds. And then finally, insiders own approximately 7% of the company. That has increased over time. When we came out of the gate, that was approximately 3%, and we've increased that to 7% over the last few years. So when we look at 2022, we're very excited. We really set the table very strongly, very well in 2021 at Green Springs by delivering those new discoveries at Tango, X-Ray, and the BC Gap, and are chomping at the bit to get back there a few weeks from now to follow up on those really exciting discoveries. I think at Pony Creek, with the new resource estimate that really pulls Pony Creek up the curve, we view that as a snapshot in time, and we believe we have the abilities to significantly increase that resource for relatively modest amount of capital. So we're aiming to drill at both those projects. We're continuing to have wide-ranging discussions with companies smaller than us, same size as us, and larger than us, to really explore all the different ways that we can create value for our shareholders. But in Nevada in 2022, with some of the turmoil that we're seeing globally, we feel this is a great jurisdiction to base our activities in. And with two high-quality, relatively high-grade oxide gold projects, we feel that we're very well positioned to create value here for 2022.
Great. Thank you very much for the informative presentation, Matt. We'll now move to the Q&A session. We do have a few questions submitted here. First, at Green Springs, when would you expect to have a maiden resource there?
That is somewhat dependent on how this spring's drilling does go. Certainly, you need a critical mass of drill holes into any one target to have a credible resource, rather than just a body of mineralization. So, a bit hard to say. Ideally, we'd be able to deliver something later in 2022.
Okay, great. And looking at shifting over to Pony Creek, on the metallurgy side, is Pony Creek metallurgically compatible with GSV's South Railroad?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So the bulk of the mineralization at Pony Creek is hosted within the same rock unit as the Dark Star deposit at Gold Standard Ventures. Our metallurgical test work so far shows that it leaches very well. You could likely get by with a minimum amount of crushing. So at a high level, yes, it would appear similar to the Dark Star ore, and likely could be processed by the same methods.
Great. And this one question, could you give us a guesstimate of your cost per ounce of the Pony Creek resource, the cost of drilling and assay costs and so on?
Yeah, that would be, so at Pony Creek, we've drilled approximately 26,000 meters over 2017, 18, and 19. Rough cost per meter is about $150 Canadian for that drilling. So certainly the initial phases when you're exploring, you hit and you miss, and it takes a while to get your stride. And then as you get into the resource definition drilling, which is certainly what we did in 18 and 19, your efficiency goes up. And so your cost to add those ounces does decrease. All in on Pony Creek, as of today, we've spent approximately $10.5 million on the project in direct exploration costs.